Today we are going to be talking about knit socks. And this sock is great for a beginner if you've never done a sock, because I'm going to walk you through each step. And I'm also going to be using this Felici Worsted Weight Yarn. This is from Knit Picks, and it's really fun to work with. It's a self-striping yarn, so there's not a lot of ends to weave in every single time you change colors. The yarn does that for you. You will also need a pair of scissors, a darning needle, some stitch markers, pull those down a little, and a stitch holder or scrap yarn will work too. And then you'll actually need two sizes of needles today. You'll need a size 3, that's a 3.25 millimeter, and a size 4, which is a 3.5 millimeter. I'm using circular needles using the magic loop method. So let's get started by casting on. For this video, I will be making the size small. That fits about shoe size 4 to 7. I also have size medium and size large written on my blog, but the size small will be what is shown in this video. To get started, we are going to be using the cable 1x1 cast on. If you haven't ever done this before, I also have a video on this, and it will be a bit slower than I'm going to go here. If you do not want to attempt that cast on, it's okay to use a different type of cast on. So feel free to just cast on 40 stitches. To do it with the cable 1x1 rib, I'm going to start with a slip knot and place it onto my needle. And I'm also starting with the smaller needles. So we are starting with the 3.25 millimeter circular needles. And I am going to cast on 40. To do the cable cast on, I will start with this first stitch on my left hand needle, and I'm going to insert as if to knit, yarn over, and I'm going to pull that through. And now I'm going to take my left needle around the front of it and place it back onto my left needle. So now I have 2 stitches. To do my next stitch, I'm going to insert my needle between those 2 stitches, pull up a loop, and then I'm going to once again place it onto my left hand needle. Now I want to alternate back and forth because I'm working in 1x1 rib. So now I will bring my yarn to the front, and I'm going to insert my needle from the back to the front in between the last 2 stitches I worked. So you can see, if I don't split my yarn there, I'm inserting my needle from the back to the front between the last 2 stitches, or the first 2 stitches on the left hand needle. And now I'm going to yarn over. So this is like working a purl stitch. I'll pull that loop up. And then I'm also going to place this onto the left hand needle, just like I did before. And now I'll take my working yarn to the back, insert in the front, place it on the left hand needle, bring my working yarn to the front, working from the back to the front with my right hand needle in between those 2 stitches. And I will keep rotating back and forth between moving my yarn to the back and inserting from the front. This yarn splits just a little, but mainly just on the cast on. And then moving my yarn to the front, inserting from the back, and do this until you have 40 stitches. So now that I have 40 stitches on my needles, I have folded my needles in half, if you can see. If you've never worked the magic loop method before, it's really quite easy. I've basically taken my work and I've folded it in half, pulled a loop out this side, and I've got a loop working on this side. And now I'm just going to continually work in the round. So to do this next part, we are going to be doing 1x1 ribbing. We are going to start with a purl stitch. And then a knit, and a purl and a knit. And we're just going to continue to do that all the way around, and we are going to work the 1x1 ribbing for a total of 7 rounds. So we'll work on these smaller needles doing this 1x1 ribbing for a total of 7 rounds. As you get to the left side of your work at this point, working the magic loop, you simply turn this around, pull this needle back, this needle out, and now we're just going to work down the other side, still on the same round, working that 1 by 1 ribbing. And now that we have done the cuff, it's time to grab your larger needle, and we are going to start working with the larger needle to do the top body of the sock. All this is knitting around and around and around. So grab that larger 3.5 needle, and we're going to knit this section of the sock. It's just the top. It's 27 rounds for any size, but remember, you can adjust that if you want to. If you want it taller or shorter in length, feel free to add or decrease rows. So keep on going, just knit in the round for 27 rounds and then come on back. Now that we have knit the top part of our sock, it is time to do the heel flap. To do this, we will begin to work in rows instead of rounds, and we will be placing some of the stitches onto a stitch holder or scrap yarn. So for size small, you will knit the first 21 stitches. And after knitting the first 21 stitches, now I have 19 stitches remaining in this round. And I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to use my little tool here, but feel free to use scrap yarn or whatever you have, anything that works as a stitch holder. And we are going to slip those 19 stitches onto a stitch holder. So I had my stitches split evenly. I had 20 stitches on the front, 20 stitches on the back using the magic loop method. But now I'm going to go ahead and take this extra stitch and just put it with the others. So now I have 21 stitches and they are all across here ready to work in rows. Now we are going to work this in rows for a total of 20 rows. Our purl row is actually our second row because we already knit the first row, and we will want to slip the very first stitch of each row as we go. So slipping the first stitch, purl the wrong side rows, knit the right side rows, and do 20 total rows, ending on a purl side row for the heel flap. All right, so now we are ready to work the shaping of our heel. I've gone ahead and I have placed a stitch marker in the 11th stitch, that is the center stitch of the heel, and we'll be working our decreases on either side of this stitch marker evenly. To get started, we will slip 1 and knit 11. So we're going to go 1 past the stitch marker, and now we are going to knit 2 together and knit 1, and we will turn at this point. And now we are going to purl 1 or slip 1 purlwise, and then we are going to purl 4. So 1 past that center stitch marker. And now we will purl 2 together and purl 1 and turn. And now we will slip 1 knitwise, and we are going to knit 5. And now we will knit 2 together and knit 1 and turn. And now we will slip 1 purlwise and purl 6. And purl 2 together and purl 1 and turn. We're going to keep repeating this method that we're doing. So we will slip 1 knitwise and knit 7, and knit 2 together, and knit 1 and turn. Now we'll slip 1 purlwise and purl 8, and purl 2 together, and purl 1 and turn. And now we will slip 1 knitwise and knit 9, and knit 2 together, and knit 1 and turn. And this will be our last row that we do this on, and we will slip 1 purlwise and purl 10. And now we are going to purl 2 together and purl in the last. Now we have decreased our stitches to 13. And we are ready to continue on. So we've done our heel flap shaping. Kind of see it creates a nice little V there. It kind of gives us more room for our heel. And we are ready to go to our next steps. It is time for us to bring back in the side stitches here. We're going to be picking out some stitches. So what we're first going to do is we are going to knit across these heel stitches. And then we're actually going to be changing to our smaller needles. Okay, so now I'm bringing my smaller needles back into the equation, and I'm going to be picking up 10 stitches along the side of this heel flap. So I'm going to let this sit and pull it out a little so it's just the cord. Get a little situated, and now I'm going to pick up 10 stitches along here, which those should be those loops. And sometimes I use a crochet hook to do this. It's usually a bit more comfortable for me than doing it with a needle, but you do what's comfortable for you. I should probably practice this more so I get a bit faster at it. And now we are going to take our held stitches and we are going to be placing those back onto our needles. So to do this, I'm actually going, because the way that my stitch holder was done, honestly, had I used just a piece of yarn, this would have gone a little bit easier. And I could have just knitted from that piece of yarn. But I'm going to go ahead and place this needle, these stitches back on this needle so that I can set them up to knit the instep stitches that were on hold. So as you can see, we're switching needles here and working around. So now I'm going to go ahead and knit the stitches that were held in the instep, and I'm just going to knit across those stitches with the smaller needle. And now that I've reached the other side of my heel flap, I am going to be also picking up 10 stitches along here. And now we have made our way back to the top of this, and we're going to go ahead and knit across these stitches and take out that larger needle. All right, so now I can kind of set myself up for this next part. I don't need this stitch marker in there anymore. I can go ahead and set my larger needles aside and not worry about those. And now we are ready to continue on with our sock, and you can kind of see where this is headed. We have the top of our sock here. We've come down to the heel, and now we're just going to work this out. So now we are getting ready to do a new beginning of the round. So we are going to knit 45 stitches and then mark the beginning of the round. Now that we have a new beginning of round, I'm placing a yellow stitch marker at the beginning of the round so I know that that is the beginning of the round. And then I'm using 2 other stitch markers to mark where we decrease. I've also used the way that I'm placing the magic loop. I've divided it where my stitch markers are. You can do it for what's comfortable for you. So to get started, we are going to knit the first 14 stitches or 2 stitches before the first decrease stitch marker. Now I will knit the next 2 stitches together, slip my stitch marker as I rearrange this magic loop here, and then I will knit in the next 21 stitches, or actually, sorry, I will knit in the next 21 stitches or 2 stitches before the next stitch marker. And now 2 stitches before the next stitch marker that I have hanging out over here, we will do a slip, slip, knit. So that's where you slip the first stitch, slip the second stitch, insert the left needle back into those stitches and knit them together. And then we will continue working around. So once we get to the next beginning of round, then we will simply do 1 round of knit. So I'll finish the last stitches in this round. And now I'm back at the beginning of the round, and now I will simply knit 1 round all the way around without decreasing and simply slipping those stitch markers. And now it's time for a little repeating. We're going to work this gusset where we will knit until 2 stitches before our first stitch marker, and we will knit 2 together. Then we will knit until 2 stitches before our second stitch marker, and we will slip, slip, knit. Then we will work our stitches back to our beginning of round stitch marker, and then we will work 1 round in knit. So we repeat those 2 rounds, 1 round decreasing, 1 round knitting and regular knit until we reach 40 stitches. Once we reach 40 stitches, we're ready to simply do the instep. Now the instep is the length of our foot. See how we decrease here, then we stop decreasing? Now we're going to just knit until we have to work the toe. So what we want to do is we want to work the instep until about 2 inches before we get to the toe. Or that's 7.5 inches for the size small from when you try it on your foot. I recommend trying it on your foot, and then when you get about 2 inches to the end of your toe, stop and then come on back for the toe. Keep track of these rounds if on your first sock so you can match these rounds exactly for your second sock. Keep on doing this and then come on back when you have done the decrease and the knit, those 2 repeats, and we're ready to work the toe. So now it's time to decrease for our toe. I have put half my stitches on one side and half of my stitches on the other. So it's evenly split. My heel is over here on the bottom. My beginning of round is on the bottom of the sock, about in the middle. And now it is time to decrease for the toe. I am going to knit until 3 stitches before the end here. Now I will knit 2 together, knit 1, and now I'll start working on the back side here, the other side. And I will do an SSK, And now I'm going to knit until the last 2 stitches on this side. And now I will do a knit 2 together. And now I'm back to this. And I will knit 1 and then do an SSK. Slip, slip, knit, and then I'll knit to the end of the round, and then I will knit 1 round solid. And now that I have knit 1 round solid, I am going to do decreases again, where I'm going to go 3 stitches to the end, and then I'm going to do a knit 2 together, knit 1, and now working on the other side of the magic loop. I will do an SSK. Now knit to the last 2 stitches on this side. And what this does is it decreases 4 stitches on every decrease round. And now I'll do a knit 2 together. And then working back on this side, I will do a knit 1. And SSK. And then knit to the end, and then I will knit 1 round solid. So continue doing this until your stitches have been decreased to 20 stitches. You'll do 1 round of decrease, 1 round solid until you've reached 20 stitches left. So now that I've knit to the end of the needle, if my stitch marker was in the middle, I simply finish out that needle. I'm able to fold these in half with my yarn coming out from that back side because I'm right-handed here. And I've loaded half the needles on the back, half the needles on the front. I've fastened off my yarn and I've placed it on a tapestry needle. So now it's time for us to close this toe opening by using the Kitchener stitch. We will first start by doing our setup, which is to purl through the first front stitch, leaving it on. And we always want to make sure that our yarn stays below our stitches and they don't go over our needles. And then on the back, we will want to insert our needle knitwise. And now we have primed. We haven't taken any stitches off yet. We've just got this primed and set up and ready to go for our 4 steps. So our 4 steps will be to do the front stitch knitwise. And then we are going to slip this off of the front needle. And now we're going to do the front stitch purlwise, but we are going to leave this one on the needle. And now we will do the back stitch purlwise and slip it off the needle. And then we will do the back stitch knitwise, leaving it on the needle. So that's our 4 steps. Let's do them one more time. We will insert our needle into the front stitch knitwise and slip that stitch off. Then we'll go through the front stitch purlwise, leaving that stitch on. And now we go through the back stitch purlwise, slipping that stitch off. And then we go through the back stitch knitwise, leaving that stitch on. And then after each 4 steps, I kind of like to adjust over here, pull my yarn so it's pretty tight. You can see it creates a nice seam here. And then you just keep repeating those 4 steps until all of the stitches are off of the needles and we have closed that opening. And now we have these beautiful pair of striped socks to wear. I really enjoyed this yarn, especially because it is a superwash merino wool, which is perfect for these style of socks and a worsted weight for something warm and cozy through those cold months. I hope you really enjoyed this project and you join me again next time.